Todd, it is such a huge honor to have you on the show. And I've been a fan of yours for nearly 6 years since first learning about what you do from Todd Herman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, I want to share that you really reinvigorated my love of marketing by reminding me that it can be fun and meaningful. And the better we are at the craft, the more people we help and the bigger ways we help them. And I think because I left marketing for several years and then found out about, starting a business online and all that goes with that complete confusion. I was probably in year 2 of my business when I came across what you did. And I was like, he gets it. And this can be fun. And I can do this. And you've been this voice in the back of my head ever since. And for everyone listening, like we've never met before, but I'm like, I know all about you, but you don't know about me. So this is going to be fun to share you with my audience because I think it is a new group of people for you.
Very cool. Well, I'm so honored and humbled, honestly, because I think I'm good at very little in general in my life. And so fortunately, I'm pretty good at marketing. And so I like to think that it compensates for all my other weaknesses.
Well, I hope everyone, listening, watching takes a moment to get really focused because you're probably going to need to listen to this 2, 3, 5 times because this is what it's like when you get to hang out with a master of the craft. They give us so much information that it takes a while to digest it. So I'm just setting the stage for the presence of how much time you've spent on this kind of work and the things that I think we'll be diving into. Does that make sense to you, Todd?
Yes, it does. Well said. Well said. Scare them a little bit up front. Let them know that I tend to go off the rails a little bit on my explanations. And so totally get it. You are spot on.
One of the things you talk about is about the difference between sales and marketing, and people get this really confused. And I'd love to start there and then maybe even sharing a little more about your backstory too, of why you know the difference between those two things.
Yeah, it's such a great question, and it's so important, and you're spot on. So first and foremost, the idea of sales and marketing is often conflated. It's talked about as if it is one and the same activity with the same objective, the same desired outcome, and it's not. Marketing and selling really couldn't be more different than they are. And they're 2 completely different activities with 2 completely different outcomes. So first and foremost, selling is really what you do when you're communicating with a prospect that already knows the type of product or service that they want. They already know that they want your type of product or service. And now really what they want to hear from you is why yours and not all the other options or solutions out there. And so when we're talking about the product, the service, the features, advantages, benefits, when we're talking about the offer, the price, the terms, the guarantee, bonuses, things like that, that's selling. And then we've got marketing. And I always like to, when I talk about marketing, I always like to start off and mention the quote from Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker is one of the greatest management gurus ever. Peter Drucker really summed up marketing. What he said has really kind of lived with me since the very first time I saw the quote. Peter Drucker said that the objective of marketing is to make selling superfluous. In other words, to make selling really unnecessary. Now, what Peter Drucker was really trying to say was not that when we do marketing, there is no sale, at the end. What Peter Drucker was really saying was that when marketing is done correctly, you turn the prospect's desire for a result, the existing desire that they had, right? When, the desire for an outcome change, transformation, we turn that into demand for your product or service before you ever even talk about your product or service, before you ever even introduce the prospect to the possibility of buying what it is that you have to offer. And so marketing, the job of marketing is really to set up the sale, to lead the prospect to want your solution, to understand why your solution is the smart choice. And so I've always been a huge fan. First of all, that's the reality, right? Marketing and selling, two completely different activities done at two different points. Marketing, when it's done right, it sets up the sale so that we don't have to sell like the typical, like there's no hardcore in your face, aggressive, obnoxious sales tactics. For us, selling becomes the presentation of the offer. Here's what we got. Here's what you got to give to get it. And here's everything that it'll do for you. And when marketing is done right, that portion, that presentation of the offer becomes this natural extension. It almost becomes this welcomed extension because you've led prospects to want your thing. And now you're giving them the ability to get your thing. And so often when it's done correctly, prospects are grateful. I've personally always really just been attracted to that since the day that I first heard it, recognized it, because I'm not a good salesperson. I don't like selling. I don't like what is typically viewed as selling, pressuring people into, buy my thing. And here's everything it'll do for you. It's great. It's this whiz bang thing. I like the idea of being able to educate folks in a strategic way that gives them ahas and insights along the way so that they see that my solution, my framework, my system, my approach is the best approach for their needs, their wants, their desires right now, so that when I give them the chance to buy it, they're truly grateful for the opportunity. And so, does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it's so good. It's so good. And I think that's why I was so attracted to what you do, because a lot of people, they don't talk about this. And then
Yeah.
it all stacks up in the sales process because they haven't done a good job marketing. All this pressure comes in sales, and that's what feels icky. And that's what
Yeah.
people feel like they are being manipulated or taken to places that they weren't really ready to be taken to, and yet they're forcing it. And that's like the worst possible experience. And especially if you're trying to build a relationship with someone, because my guess is when you do that, and I don't do that, so I guess I don't know, but I'm guessing when you do those kind of sales and you haven't done a good job in the marketing and then with your sales process, you get a lot of returns. You get a lot of unhappy customers. You get people just saying, well, this isn't what I wanted. I changed my mind. I felt pressured, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. One thing that I've always carried with me as an entrepreneur, and I think it certainly is partially why I'm such a fan of this approach, besides the fact that it works so well, is I always recognize the value of playing the long game. I'm not, it was never about and this, no judgment, it's a judgment-free zone. And so no judgment here, but I want to, like, I want to earn somebody's business. And I don't want them to feel icky when they're participating in a transaction with me, or feel like pressured into doing it, pressure from me. I would much rather them feel pressure from themselves, because they realize this is great. This is exactly what I need. And Todd really opened my eyes to why this is the best course of action for me. Therefore, I want it. So I want that pressure to come from them, not me. And I've always been willing to just, I'm okay. I'm willing to sacrifice, transactions today for a future relationship with somebody that feels good about being part of the relationship.
Yeah. The difference of like convincing is actually tuning into the person and what's going on for them, and having them start to have an experience with what you've created, so they're becoming empowered to make good choices for themselves. And I think that this is also interesting because we're not saying that you don't use emotion. And I know you talk a lot about the importance of emotion in the marketing process. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, first of all, you said it so much more eloquently than I did. I want to turn around. I want to start to interview you, because you shared it. You did such a great job of really of sharing that. Um, And so I think, let me add my little 2 cents to that. It's really the difference between pushing somebody and leading them, right? Like, in other words, I don't want to push them to make a decision. I want to lead them to see why that decision is in their best interest. And so my job is not to try to force them to buy. My job, as I see it through marketing, through an education-based marketing approach, is to give them the insights, the ahas, to give them the information that leads them to see why this is the best choice. So when I said that, when you do marketing right, when you use education-based marketing, and we'll circle back and talk a little bit about what I mean by education-based marketing. But right, this is why I said that when you present the offer, prospects are grateful. They're like thanking us for the opportunity to buy. Why? Because through education, we led them to understand that this was the best course of action. So now that we're giving them the chance to take that course of action, they're grateful for the opportunity. It's the difference between pushing somebody and leading them to the conclusion on their own. And so, you had asked a question about emotion and emotion in marketing. So you really, today, there was a time and place where, if you look at the bookshelf back here, so my most treasured books on that shelf are the old school direct response books. But they're right. My most treasured, like, if God forbid I ever needed to grab books and go, I'm grabbing that shelf and heading out the door and leaving all the others. But there was something that was shared in those books that I no longer feel applies to marketing today. And the thing that shared in most of those books is that there was a time when direct response marketing was viewed as salesmanship in print. They would say, like, what we're doing is it's selling in print, right? We're salespeople, and we're just kind of delivering a sales message. I no longer believe that that is the case, especially today with the internet and the opportunity for ongoing communication and dialogue and so on. But part of any marketing and sales message, there has to be two elements today. That is emotional, like prodding emotions, driving emotions, triggering emotions, and there has to be logic. In other words, we've heard that, this kind of, salesmanship 101 or salesperson 101 is this idea that people buy out of emotion. And yes, we are all emotionally driven creatures, right? Human beings are driven by emotions. We buy out of emotion, and we buy to satisfy emotions. When we buy let's say a home security system, we're buying the feeling of being more secure, right? We're buying security, but really what we're buying is the feeling of security. So we buy out of emotion, and we buy emotions. But what a lot of entrepreneurs and marketers have misunderstood is that doesn't mean that our messages are absent of any logical support. And so today, in a marketing message, you need to trigger the emotions, the emotional reasons why somebody would buy. You need to stir up emotion. You need to get your prospect emotionally invested, emotionally excited about the payoff, about the result, about the likelihood of their success, whatever that means with your product or service. But you also need to give the logical support, the logical reasons why this is a great solution, this is the best solution for their need, the logical support for why they should feel confident moving forward. When you don't, and when entrepreneurs, when businesses have pure emotionally driven marketing, that's when you see a lot of buyer's remorse. That's when you see a lot of people post-purchase that, they ask for a refund, they return the product, that sort of thing. Because when you have a purely emotional driven message, when it's all about the payoff, the result, the excitement, the exclusivity, the status improvement, all the emotional drivers, well, what happens is after the transaction, that emotion wears off, right? Like, you think of it like a campfire. And right at the very end of that campaign, that fire, that flame is blazing, right? It's as high as it's going to be. And then every hour after, that flame dies down, right? During the marketing, we're stoking that flame and we're getting them emotionally excited and emotionally invested. But then afterwards, it dies down. And now all they're left with is like, why did I do this? Rationally, logically, they're thinking, why did I do this? And so if you don't give that logical support as part of the marketing education, you end up with a lot of buyer's remorse. The other thing is that today, more so than ever before, because our prospects are exposed to so many more marketing and sales messages than ever before in the history of mankind, people are a lot more skeptical. There are many markets that are a lot more jaded because they've experienced these promise driven, emotional campaigns they've purchased and then they didn't get what it is that they were promised. So today, what people want is they want evidence, right? What most entrepreneurs have been taught to do, the ones that have studied direct response or direct marketing in general, they think they've been taught, just tell people what your product is going to do for them, claim that it's going to do X, Y, and Z, promise them they're going to experience LMNOP, the transformation, the result, the outcome, all of that. And what the majority of prospects today and the majority of markets are thinking when they're seeing that is, yeah, right. Prove it to me. Give me something to hang my hat on that makes me feel like logically comfortable with why is this going to deliver the result, right? It's not enough to just say this is different. What makes it different? It's not enough to just say this is better. What makes it better? It's not enough to say this works faster. Why? Give me some logical support for that claim that you're making. And so today, the right marketing messages have a healthy mix and balance of emotional appeal and logical support. And all that is delivered during the education portion of a marketing message.
Beautiful. I'm curious, and I know we don't have enough time to dive all the way into it, but one of your systems, like the E5 system and like the unique mechanism, is that one of the ways that you're actually showing people that you have the ability to help them? Because that's how I've interpreted it. But now, as you explain that, maybe I'm not right.
Okay, so great question. Love the question. So check this out. Let's take a step back for 1 second. And so, number one of the most important, I'm going to give some context, and then we'll dive into the unique mechanism. So, one of the first things that folks really need to understand as it relates to marketing today, more so than ever before, is differentiation is key. One of the first things that people look for in even a marketing message, let alone a product, let alone an offer, is what's different about this, right? People don't want more of the same. People tune out more of the same, right? Like it's what people want to know, what is new and different. That's what attracts people. What is new? What is different? And so one of the first things that you need to answer in your marketing message, in marketing in general, is what makes this different. Now, when it comes to differentiation, there are really only three ways that you can differentiate. The first way is you can differentiate if you're able to make a promise, if you're able to promise the prospect some result, some outcome, some transformation that nobody else, none of your competitors are promising, that is enough of a point of differentiation. And so if you're able to promise some sort of result, payoff, transformation, outcome that nobody else is promising, that is enough. That's rare in most instances, in most markets, which brings me to the USP. So USP is unique selling proposition. This was a term first coined by a gentleman named Rosser Reeves, one of the legends of direct response marketing. And the USP, the easiest way to really understand this is when your product or service comes with a benefit that is unique to your particular product or service. So I'm not talking about you're promising something unique, right? We already talked about that. I'm just talking about if your product or service comes with an additional benefit that is unique amongst your competitors, you have what is referred to as a USP, as a unique selling proposition. Now, just like a unique promise, a USP is rare. You see today is very, very rare. Typically, you see USPs with disruptive technologies, like when Uber first hit the scene, right? Like they had a lot of they had really many USPs, right? Like you could hail a ride on your phone. You didn't have to have cash on you. You didn't have to tip. You could see when the person arrived. All that stuff. Of course, thanks to Lyft and other rideshare companies, that's no longer a USP for Uber. But then you had Netflix. When Netflix first went from the DVD things to all online, that they had a massive unique selling proposition. You don't have to go to the store. You had unlimited movies. You could start them and stop them and choose something else. Blah, blah, blah. Today, of course, we know that that's no longer a USP because there's tons of streaming options. And so a USP is rare today, like I said, usually with disruptive technologies, which brings us to the third point of differentiation, which is a unique mechanism. Now, the way that I want you to think about the unique mechanism is how your product or service delivers the result. So we talked about at the foundation of all marketing, prospects are buying a solution to a problem, right? Number one, every product or service, right, is when it's marketed and sold correctly, it's based on this understanding that prospects buy products and services for a result, for an outcome, to solve a problem. Problems can fall under one of two categories. You can have an existing pain point that you want to get rid of. You've got, God forbid, arthritis in your knee, or your home is ready to go in foreclosure, God forbid, and you want to get at it. You want to get out of pain. You want to solve that issue. But the other category of problem or problems is an unfulfilled need or desire. And so I want to grow a green, lush lawn. I'm not a handy guy. I have no idea what to do. And so, right, that's an unfulfilled desire that I have. That's also what we call a problem. Every product or service, right, when it's marketed effectively, is being marketed as a solution to a problem. It starts with what is the problem that the prospect has that they are trying to alleviate, and what is the outcome that they want. So that they're in this current state, they've got these frustrations or these obstacles or this lack of knowledge or whatever it is, and they want the result. I always say, right, like nobody buys a bottle of vitamin D tablets because they want a bottle in their kitchen cabinet, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody buys a financial investing newsletter because they're excited about an 8-page document showing up in the mail. They're buying it because they believe that it's going to give them a bigger portfolio. It's going to give them more successful trades, right? People buy the bottle of vitamin D because they believe it's going to help with bone density and cardiovascular health. And so people are buying products and services because they are solutions to a problem. So now with that, let's go back to the unique mechanism. So the unique mechanism is, how does your product or service work to solve the prospect's problem? And it's a unique mechanism because we identify what is unique about the way that your product or service works to solve the prospect's problem and give them the result they want. So while the USP, the unique selling proposition, is a different benefit, the unique mechanism is how your product or service works to deliver the result. So the result, the payoff, the promise can be the same as everybody else in the marketplace, right? If you're in a mature market and what you are delivering is the same result as your competitors are, that's where the unique mechanism comes in. And we identify the unique mechanism. We identify how your product or service works differently from competitors. And we can talk a little bit about that process of identifying it. It's a lot easier than most people think. Then what we do, once we've identified the unique mechanism, we've named it properly, then what we're able to do is we're able to build our entire education-based marketing message around the unique mechanism. Then we're able to take this unique mechanism and we're able to introduce it to the marketplace and say, basically, we've got a different and superior way for you, Mrs. Prospect, to get the result you want. And here's what makes it different. Here's what makes it superior. Here's how it works. Here's why it works, right? And through that kind of messaging, we're teaching. We're not talking about a product. We're not talking about a service. We're not talking about an offer. We're giving them insights, ahas, information about this different way to get the result that they want, a way that they haven't tried before, a way that they haven't heard before. And so what happens is, number one, we give prospects a tremendous amount of hope that maybe this time I will experience the result that I'm after because this is a different way. Maybe this is what I've been missing all this time in my diet, in my exercise program, in my wealth building, in taking care of my lawn. Maybe this is the thing that I've been lacking all along, and that's why I haven't been getting the results. So we build a tremendous amount of hope. The second thing that we're able to do with the unique mechanism is now we're able to educate. We're not pitching a product. So we're no longer in selling mode. We're in education mode, but we're using education-based marketing because the education is strategically done, meaning we're educating about one thing and one thing only, and that is how and why the unique mechanism is different and superior for the prospect to get the result that they want. And so we treat it almost like, and you may have heard me say this before, we are really, when it comes to that marketing, that education-based marketing message, I refer to it as a marketing argument, because what we're doing is we're presenting an argument to prove the value of the unique mechanism. We're presenting an argument to prove that we've got a different and superior way for the prospect to get the result that they want. And it's much more akin to a prosecutor in presenting a court case than it is to being a salesperson or even a copywriter, right? Because what is a prosecutor goes into the court case and knows that they've got one belief that they are trying to establish in the mind of the jury, right? That the defendant is guilty and should be punished to the full extent of the law. And everything that the prosecutor does and says and shows and presents and demonstrates is there for one reason and one reason only. And that is to move the jury one step at a time, closer and closer to that one belief. And then when the prosecutor has led the jury to that one belief, they give their closing argument, their call to action, go back into the deliberation room and find the defendant guilty. That's the same thing we're doing, except our jury is prospects. The one belief that we're ultimately trying to get them to accept is that this unique mechanism, the way or how our product or service works to deliver the result, the framework, the system, the formula, the process behind it, depending on what it is that you're marketing and selling, we're proving to them that it's not only different, but that it is superior to every other option. And then when we've led them to accept that one belief, the buying belief, or what I often refer to as the marketing thesis, it's only after that point that we segue into the offer and give them the opportunity to buy the product, which is how they get to enjoy the benefits of the unique mechanism, because it's in the product that the unique mechanism is delivered. And so does that make sense?
Yes, I learn new things, or I'm thinking about scenarios. Just it's so powerful, particularly in the area that I'm in, because we're talking about intangibles, right? Intangible experiences that we are helping people, go from not having, a good relationship with their husband into having this, beautiful, loving, level one, as Tony Robbins says, relationship. You're like, where do you even start? But when you bring something like unique mechanism into the equation, now you have something as a marketer even to work with, because I feel like so much of the time you're just grasping for these cliches and these things that everyone has heard a gazillion times, totally boring, not differentiated. You sound like everyone else, but what has changed here is now you stand out. I will say to you, I didn't know I was doing this in the way that you teach, but so my book, The Mindful Millionaire, has a unique mechanism called I Prosper. And I kind of backed into it, and it ultimately led the book to get sold to St. Martin's Press. And they really got it because of the unique mechanism. There's lots of people out there talking about money mindset, but I had a process, and I had proof through a quiz that I've been doing that people were interested in this combination of chakras and money. But that wasn't enough. If I didn't have I Prosper, which was the mechanism, it would have just been ideas out there. And so I'm living proof of everything you teach. But I'm also realizing that I'm probably still just scratching the surface of what I could do with what I've built, because I still can get lost in like, wait a minute, you have a powerful tool that you can continue to find new ways to market by listening to what you just said.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. And before our time together, I had the chance to check out your website, and I was thoroughly impressed. You know, the thing, you know, for everybody to really understand is, you know, I want to be careful that I don't go down a crazy rabbit hole, but you never want to present your product or service. And I want to differentiate for 1 second between, so you've got the product, the service, if you offer, you know, coaching or consulting, or I don't care what, a physical product, you've got the product, but then you've got the mechanism behind how the product works. So even if you were, right, if you're marketing and selling, let's say, a supplement to help lower blood pressure, well, in that I could ask you, right, well, why does the supplement work to lower blood pressure? What is it about the supplement, right? It's nutrients. It's the combination of nutrients. It is the dosages or the forms of the nutrients in there, plus the dosages, plus the combination and the way that it's delivered in a certain kind of tablet. It's all of those things combined that are the reason why that supplement is able to lower blood pressure. So it's important for everybody to understand the difference between the two, that you've got a product or service, whether it's a software, whether it's consulting, whether it's an agency, whatever it may be, right? And then you've got the reason why the product or service works, the underlying framework, formula, process, system, set of steps, et cetera. Well, we never want to allow your product or service to be positioned in the mind of the prospect as a commodity. And a commodity is really the simplest way to really think about this in this context is a commodity is something that they can get somewhere else. They can go somewhere else. So I want to give a very simple example. So I see this mistake made often where, let's go back to the example of a supplement. And so to lower blood pressure. So I want you to imagine that we come to a web page with a marketing message, and it talks about blood pressure and the negative effects of blood pressure and what it does to you and your kidneys and blah, 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 and all this crazy stuff. And it scares the bejesus out of you. And then it introduces, right, fortunately, there's a natural solution. You don't want to go with drugs, and they scare the bejesus out of you about medications, blah, blah, blah. And then they say, but we've got the solution for you. It's XYZ product. And then they say this thing drops blood pressure naturally, all this stuff. And then they say, and the secret is in the fact that it contains 500 milligrams of magnesium sulfate. And then they go on to explain how magnesium sulfate works and why it's able to drop blood pressure, blah, blah, blah. Well, what they don't realize is they've just shot themselves in the foot, because they've just allowed their product to be positioned as a commodity. Because now what does the average prospect do? Like, what does Todd do? Todd goes, pause, Amazon, magnesium sulfate. There we go. It's $15 here, over there. It's $60, $15. Let me order it and see if it does anything. Right. And so because they just said the secret is in commodity, which I can now go somewhere else. So when somebody says, I'm going to teach you how to get more traffic to your website, and it's all about doing Facebook ads properly, they just allowed it to be a commodity. Pause, YouTube, Facebook ads, Amazon, Facebook ads. There's a book on that. Before I spend X thousands of dollars, let me go and buy the book. And so we never, ever want to allow our product or service to be positioned as a commodity. The unique mechanism prevents that commoditization, because the unique mechanism is the unique way that your product or service works. It's the I prosper. It's your unique approach to giving somebody the healthy relationship, or whatever it may be, the end result that they want. If they press pause and they go over and they type I prosper, they're either going to find nothing, or they're only going to find links back to you. Mm-hmm. And so you prevent that commoditization. And so that is really, really important. You have to identify that mechanism, that unique mechanism. And it's not enough to just have a mechanism. In the example of the blood pressure lowering supplement, they had a mechanism. Every product or service has a mechanism. In other words, if we said, how does it work? Like, why does it work? Right? You might say, because it contains 500 milligrams of magnesium sulfate. We want to identify the unique mechanism, right? And so we need to know what competitors are claiming are their mechanisms, so that we can be assured that we come up with a unique mechanism. And oftentimes it really just comes about through interrogating your product or your process, your system, your framework. So you had mentioned earlier, Todd Herman. And so Todd, the first time Todd is he's an all-star, like, to say the least. I remember I got to tell you this, the very first time I met him, I was at a conference, which, like, I rarely go to conferences. Like, I'm this crazy introvert, right? So rarely go to conferences. I'm at a conference and it's like in between sessions. I think I was there to speak. And normally I'll speak and then I'm back at my room, but I'm out and about, like, looking at something. And some guy comes up to me and introduces himself, like, quick, walks away. This is years ago. And he was dressed to the nines. Right? Like, I'm talking, like, I look like a slob, 99% of the time. He's got like a hanky coming out of his jacket, like match, hanky, pink shirt, gorgeous shoes. I'm thinking to myself, like, who is this? The guy who owns the hotel? Like, what, So he reaches out. He says, like, I want to come down to Florida, meet with you. So the very first time that Todd comes down and spends the day with me in West Palm Beach, I'm asking him a bunch of questions. I'm interrogating his process for helping people achieve their peak status, their peak state, all this. And midway through, Todd, he just throws out this little, he's like, oh, it's like stepping into this, alter ego. And then he keeps going on. And I say, whoa, stop. There it is. Like, that's the money right there. Because, right, that's an example of, and it's done really well for Todd, like, he's a beast today. But the point is, right, that while Todd was talking about, and this is one, just one example, while he's talking about how to thrive in whatever setting you want to be in, how to step into your peak state, something that there are a lot of people that talk about. It's a very big marketplace with a lot of competitors. He had a different way to help people do that. That different way, right, is that the alter ego system or process, whatever it's called today. That's his unique mechanism. And so now, right, everything that he's been able to do, he goes back to the reason why you can experience these results is because of this process. I'm going to teach you how to get into flow state, right, which is a commodity, but I'm going to teach you this process. So all the good, all the benefits, all the outcome, the transformation, the result is now tied directly to the unique mechanism. So everything that he educates on is the alter ego framework. And it's all tied back to that, which he is the only source of.
Yep. 100%. It's so funny. Just even this morning, I was working with a client, and you're inside my head, by the way, like, all the time. And she was saying something about how irritated she was about technology. And she was kind of having a breakdown. And she was saying things like, we need to, stop the blowing out the circuits from, and she was talking about technology. And I was like, stop right there. Like, you just said something that I think is part of your process. Like, we're trying to get to this process underneath that's so close to you that you can't see it. And now I've become good at helping people find this thing, because it's like ubiquitous to them. They don't know what they're saying, just like what happened with Todd.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so cool when you see it, like, hearing you do that with your client. It's so cool when it really is oftentimes the unique mechanism is there's always a unique mechanism, unless somebody is selling a pure commodity, like you're selling a glass of tap water or something like that. There's always, I don't care if you're a chiropractor, there's always a unique mechanism. Oftentimes it's just taken for granted, right? Because they're so close to it that they've never thought about why they do what they do and the order in which they do it. Why do they do these 5 steps, not 6, not 7? Why do they leave out some of the common steps that others do? Why do they do it over this timeline? Why do they do it the way that they do it? Why do they do this first and this second and this third? See, it's the interrogating, it's the questioning of why do you do what you do and why do you do it that way? And what's the benefit of doing it like that? And what happens if you do it out of order? And why don't you do the common stuff? Why don't you tell people to do X and Y and Z? Most people, when you dig, they've got the reasons why they do it. They've got this belief in there. You just gotta pull it out. And the beautiful thing is that when you do that and you go through that process and you identify it, right? You identify why we do what we do and how we do it, in the order in which we do it, and the steps that we do, and then we name it. We give it a credible sounding name, and everything has been named. Anything that has a name, somebody named, right? And so everybody always feels like, I can't name it. Like, like, why not? Somebody named everything. They're like, you know what I mean? Like, this is an official, like, right? Like Six Sigma management, approach. Why? Somebody named it that. Like, everything has been named. And so the beauty is that once we do that interrogating, we now have the heart and soul of that education-based marketing content, right? Because now we've got, like, when somebody asks, like, why is this superior? You've got the reasons, because we expose the reasons during the interrogating. And like I like to say to all of our students and clients of every level, I always say, like, look, you already believe that your approach is the best. I have to believe that you believe your approach is the best, because if you didn't believe it was the best, you'd be doing it differently. You'd be doing something else. So you already believe that your approach is the best. Now we just need to understand why. And then it's that why, what's the result of doing these 5 steps? Why do you only have to do these 5 steps? Why in this order? We're able to take that information that we uncovered during that interrogating, and that becomes the heart and soul of the education-based marketing, which is what we then use to lead somebody to realize, yeah, I see why this method, this mechanism, this framework is what I've been missing. I realize that's the way to do it, right? So ultimately, we're leading, by the end of the marketing portion of the campaign, we've led the prospect to say, yeah, you know what, you guys, you're right. That is the right way to do it. I get it. It makes total sense. I see it. Then when we segue into the offer, which becomes very simple, right? And that's why we put together XYZ package, and let me tell you everything that you get with it and everything that it'll do for you. They're thrilled. They're like, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to get this mechanism that I now realize is the best thing for me. And so it's just a beautiful thing in motion, and it doesn't have that icky factor, right? It's not pressure, it's education. So there's value being delivered. You're positioned as an expert, as an authority, as a resource. And it's beautiful because you're positioned as all those things. You're giving value, you're giving ahas, while you are just methodically and strategically leading them to see your mechanism as the answer, so that when you present your offer, folks jump at it.
Now everybody knows why I was so excited about this conversation. I'm just like,
Hopefully I'm not scaring anybody off.
No, they're just going to have to listen several times. Like I said, I'm going to have to listen several times. For anyone listening, what is their next best step if they want to learn more about you, and how can they take this to the next level? Because some people are going to be like, yes, we have to do something more. This is too much good stuff for me to stop here.
I like that. What a great question. So I believe my team has this crazy offer for the book, and like a whole bunch of bonus trainings at e5bundle.com. And I believe it's like $10 or something crazy.
Ooh.
And so E5, the letter E, the numeral 5 bundle.com. And it is great. I think you can choose there to either get a physical copy of the book or a digital copy. There might also be the audio version. I'm not even sure what these guys have up there, but I know that it's a stacked offer. And so that's a great spot to get started.
Yeah, I will just say, like, you're my running partner because I've
Oh boy.
signed up for these things, and I'll stop in the middle of the street sometimes. And I think people are like, you are the weirdest runner. Because I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to type into my phone while I've had this massive breakthrough because of what you said in one of the classes of the many classes that I've invested in over the years that I listen to over and over and still keep learning from. So please, if this is like speaking to you, take that next step. You will never regret it. It's like the happiest decision from a marketing standpoint I could make.
That's so cool. That's so funny because when I go and I tell my wife, and I'm blessed and grateful to get that kind of response often from people. And I go and I'll tell my wife, hey, this person said, like they listen to me every day, blah, blah, blah. And my wife will be like, that's great. Take the garbage out. And so in my house, there is very little. My wife's like, that's fantastic. Pick your socks up off the floor and bring the laundry to the laundry room. I'm like, all right. And
I
so
do the
all
same
good.
thing.
Yeah.
People will reach out and they've read my book, and then I'll be like, do you know what somebody told me today? And my husband's like, oh, here we go. And I'm like, okay, yeah,
after all these years, it's still it's worth very little in my house. But I love it, and I'm so glad. I think hopefully it excites folks to realize that that there is a process, a method that they can replicate for their own businesses, that they don't have to be this, superstar or salesperson or copywriter, that it's so not about that today. It's interesting because for most of the newer entrepreneurs, when they first start to learn about direct response marketing, direct marketing, and they see a lot of stuff, out there, the reality is most of the stuff out there, it's not very good. But they tend to they think in their mind, I've got to write that way. I've got to talk that way. I've got to use that kind of language. And the reality is, when your marketing sounds like marketing, when it sounds like salesmanship, when it sounds like copy, it's not good. Good copy, good marketing doesn't feel like copy. It doesn't feel like you're being manipulated. It feels educational. It feels valuable, right? You want your stuff you want people to walk away from your marketing, and whether they've bought or they haven't bought, you want them to say, wow, that was insightful. That was good. Right. And that's how you keep people responsive. That's how you keep people coming back. And so hopefully we've inspired some folks to really say, hey, this is something that I can do. I want to learn more about it and have some fun with it.
I'm playing the long game. I think that's what I'm going to call this podcast.
Play the long game. Like, always play the long game, practice a little delayed gratification, recognize that, I always like to say, it's probably a perfect way to end our time like that. It's very easy, especially as your business grows and you've got, you end up with, thousands of people on your email list, to start to look at these people, to start to not even see them as people, but to see them as contact records, like to see them as a list, to see them as a database. And one thing that I'm really grateful for is that I've never lost touch with the fact that there are real people on the other side of all of our communications with real goals and dreams and aspirations and fears and families. And we need to treat them the right way and respect their time and do the right thing. And I think that that's part of playing the, the long game, like do the right thing, and I believe you do the right thing and the right thing happens.
Thank you, Todd, so much for being here and for sharing all of this with us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.